for joining us. How's the conference going for you all so far? Yes? Good? Are you learning some new things? Yeah? Are you getting a good mindset? An open mindset, a growth mindset, an exponential mindset? Yes? If not, then pay close attention because there's not much left this afternoon. And remember, that's the main goal, for you to leave with that kind of mindset more than anything else. Well, we have a few people that are still coming in. As they are, I'll remind you, I'm Jonathan Knowles, one of the founding faculty members at Singularity University. And today we're going to spend a little time in conversation here with somebody who just heard from this morning. Andreas is back here with us on stage. And we thought we'd do a couple of things. We might talk for a little bit about Hyperloop and transportation and cities just for a few minutes. And then we'll do some Q&A with people and see if people have some questions. And how does that sound to all of you? Does that sound just like a good use of our time? Excellent. So, you didn't know this until just 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
That about 5 years ago, just when you guys were kicking all this off in the small town that I live in, you're the CEO of HTT, Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, happened to be in the somewhat small Bay Area town that I live in, and we just happened to be visiting the same secret technology under development in my small town, and we met each other, and I was at Autodesk at the time, and he was telling me about this model and the community that you were doing and how you were doing it, and I said, that sounds great. How about at Autodesk, we just give you the software that you need for these team members, and it became part of the deal to participate in this. When you participate in this project, your benefits are ownership in the company through options and free Autodesk software from the menu. And we just learned a few minutes ago, he just learned that was me who did that deal at Autodesk. And so I've been following this for years and paying a lot of attention to it. I'm curious how you got started in this whole space.
How I got started.
Like, what really got you thinking about this? Was it simply, I don't like to travel, it's no fun anymore, like you mentioned this morning, or?
Well, it was a little bit more on that, you know. I knew Dirk, your friend, our CEO, since he was, I'm going to say almost a kid, because he was 30 years old at that time. I was managing a big corporation in Spain, and we bought 51% of his company in Italy. And, you know, we're working together for 4 years. Then he was smarter than me. He left that business and went to America. He fell in love with an American girl, so. And then, like 5 years or 6 years later, he called me. He said, Andreas, I'm in this project. This is amazing. You're going to love it. Let's talk. And we talked, you know. I thought that was amazing. It was great. I was tired of traveling, but now I travel 100% more, you know. And yeah, and I get involved. But first as a contributor, actually. Like everybody, I was like 1 year working while I was managing my own companies as a contributor for exchange of stock options. And then they basically convinced me to get involved completely. You know, oh, the project convinced me because, you know, when you get involved in a project like this, it's very easy to be convinced.
Now, you know, we know that the idea of a Hyperloop type transportation is not a new idea. What, in reality, how many different companies are there out there now really trying to do this?
Well, first of all, it's really that it's not a new idea. Humanity has been thinking about this for decades, you know, for years. In fact, the first patent was from 1908 from Robert Goddard, one of the scientists of the Manhattan Project. And if you read the patent, really he's describing the Hyperloop, okay? But Elon has the good idea of putting the spotlight on this. Today, basically, we were the first company that was formed to develop the Hyperloop. When Elon said that he had no time to develop it, we put it in our platform, just for fun, and we were the first company. Then Hyperloop technologies came, that is what we know now like Hyperloop One. And basically, these are the two main companies that are developing this. And then there are some of the, because on the SpaceX competition, there were some students, and some of them are trying to develop some areas of the Hyperloop too, and all that, and creating his own companies around the world.
I think it's clear to me that in places like where I live in California, I can't imagine actually seeing that put in anytime soon. I think it's great that places like Dubai and some of the other places that you mentioned are doing this. Is that because they're just able to sort of cut through? I mean, the reason we can't do it in, say, California easily is because of a lot of complex land ownership issues, and or is it also because there's a real need in those places and governments see that and they're trying to accelerate to something they think that's going to really solve a problem, or is it something else?
Well, I think that if we think in a global scale, okay, you have well-developed countries that they have already mass transportation, like Europe with the high-speed rail, where this is going to happen, but it's going to happen later. You've got the United States that is a very unique situation because rail for passengers is not big, you know. And there is a huge opportunity in the United States, but as you have said, it's a very complex environment, right-of-ways and things like that. I think that with our way of working will be a little bit less complex because we don't expect to do everything by ourselves. We expect just to license the technology. We are a network orchestrator. We are creating this industry, and we will be licensing the technology to the infrastructure operators, transportation operators. So there will be opportunities to collaborate with people that already have right-of-ways, and maybe that will simplify the process. But definitely, places like the Middle East, where right now, especially in the Emirates, they are thinking on being the first one, being the biggest one, being the, you know, that makes things easier.
Yeah.
Okay? And on the other hand, you have areas that this is not something that is just something that is better. It's a need. Okay? Asia, China, Southeast Asia also, I think, is India. There are really areas of the world where Hyperloop is really, really becoming a need, you know? So it's not something that is gonna improve the way people live, but it's something that really, if we want that people live in a minimum standard of quality of life, and transportation has that minimum standard, they are gonna need it.
I'm super excited about it. I could relate completely, as I think everyone in here could too, to your comments about travel. You know, realistically, let's be super candid right now. When can, you know, as much as you can, I'm not one to pick dates.
Okay.
I know some people will be able to tell you, well, on October 21st, 23, 27, a particular thing will happen. But generally speaking, when do you think we're going to start to see these kinds of things?
Okay, so let's go step by step.
Yeah.
First, as I have explained before, we are with our Research and Development Center in Toulouse. It's the first real full-scale system in the world. We are starting testing next week or the week before, so, you know, that's a big step for us. In parallel, we are doing all the detailed engineering of the 5 kilometers in Dubai that we expect, if all the funding goes well and everything, you know, to be breaking ground in March of next year and finishing in 1.5 years, okay? So that put us in a scenario of more or less 2 to 3 years to be ready to demonstrate to the world that the technology is there and the technology is reliable. Because it's not about making a test and showing that we can move it. No, it's about you can move this thing every day in a reliable way, works, and that. We have been working in parallel developing the safety regulatory guideline, and we have been working in parallel with Munich Re Insurance, to develop all the insurance concept. So that means that in the moment that we are we have demonstrated that the technology works. We are ready also to go in parallel with the regulatory and insurance. That, let's say, is 3 years from now. At that moment, we will be ready to be licensing our technology.
And infrastructure projects can take some time.
Yeah, depends on the project, but easily 2 to 3 years.
Do you imagine this being the kind of things we see in our existing cities, or really new cities, new places first? Do you think people will be replacing using existing infrastructure bits?
My particular thinking is that this will start with short distance, okay? Why? Because nobody is going to invest billions of billions when at the beginning they will want to accumulate the risk, no? So probably we will start more like airports to city centers and things like that, or a small distance of 100 kilometers, 150 kilometers, and then we will go to the 500 kilometers and the big projects, okay? So that's the normal thing, that we think. But you never know also, because at the end of the day, it depends on the appetite of the different governments, and of the different stakeholders.
We've been stuck on trains for a long time. I'm really long time. We still today, when we build new cities, we put metal tracks down the middle of the road, and we run trains on those things. Even when in the 1950s and 60s we were promised monorails would take us everywhere that we want to go. Is it because they are these infrastructure projects and it's just hard to sort of break out of these things?
Well, I think the rail industry has evolved. Definitely, if you compare the rail industry with the other industries, has not evolved at the same rate. That's clear. High-speed rail was an attempt to improve the situation, but has a big problem, and is sustainability. Is economical profitability. One of the things that nobody knows is that when you do a feasibility study of a high-speed rail, and I always put the same sample, no? Spain is the second country in the world with more kilometers of high-speed rail after China.
Okay.
The line that is more profitable is the line Madrid-Barcelona. In an independent study that was done by the University of Valencia, they arrived to the point that they studied the P&L of the infrastructure operator and the transportation operator putting together. You needed 100 years to recap the investment of the most profitable one, okay? So how do you justify that investment? Of course, then when you do a feasibility study, you talk about the social economical impact, how does it affect. Our goal is to create an infrastructure that is profitable by itself, that can work between 10 and 15 years rate of investment. And the feasibility studies we are doing are around that. That changed drastically the way that we are thinking right now. And it's a big competitor of the train. Definitely at the beginning we will share spaces and all that, but later on we will.
So this is one of the things that actually attracted me to what you guys are doing when I first met Dirk those years ago, was this thinking big. And I think that's part of what it means to have that open and growth mindset, that exponential mindset, is that ability to be able to zoom in and zoom out on these kinds of things. And I got the impression that he was doing that, and just now that you guys are doing that. I think that is so critical, that ability to really zoom out sometimes. I will throw out there an organization I'm familiar with called the Long Now Foundation.
Okay.
It was started by Stuart Brand, who created the Whole Earth Catalog in the 1970s, 60s actually. That was a big thing in the US. And they are focused on 10,000-year thinking. And I'm glad someone is. I don't think all of us need to, but I'm glad you guys are thinking like 100-year timeframes. You have to think about that, I think. And I think when we think about the future of cities and humans coming together, it's so important that we're able to zoom out and look at that. And I think as one example of why that's interesting, at least to me, is your business model approach here. And that was another thing that attracted me to what you were doing, was it was unique. How's that going?
Well, I think that...
And let's tell people again, just real clear, what it is. Who are these people that are doing work, and what are they doing, and why are they doing it?
Well, I think that most of them, they are doing it because of passion, okay?
Passion.
Being completely honest, there's people signing the agreements in exchange of stock options that they are not even reading the agreements. They don't care. It's not about the money, okay? We have more than 800 people, 800 contributors around the world, completely different expertise. You have some people, young kids and all of that. Well, young kids now, but young professionals, okay? Yeah. But you also have people with a lot of experience, people that is retired, that is putting his experience. Or, I always put the sample, no? For instance, our lead freight manager for our freight program is the CEO of the biggest Iberian company in logistics, And he's doing that job and also working with us. Theoretically, 10 hours a week, normally much more than that, to put his expertise and all that. And just imagine, okay, they came to you. You have been working in a corporation all your life. You have your pension fund, you have everything. And there is a startup that tries to hire you. You have to take all the risks and all of that. Maybe you don't do it. But if they go to you and they say, okay, you can continue working on this and give us 10 hours of your time to work in what you really like, in what you are really good at. Because when we work, sometimes a part of our job is doing things that we are not good at, okay? So, but if you concentrate on that part, that's that. Of course, we are learning as we go. And I always say the thing, I've been managing industrial corporations all my life around the world, in different countries of the world, and I have never felt my people pushing me too much like here, People is really, really pushing. You don't need to pull them, you don't need to, they have the passion to push you. And we are learning as we go. We are improving the system every year.
That's great. I hope you are documenting this so that you can also show other people how to do this, because this is, I think, how we get there. This is how we solve problems, is how to, finding new ways to get people who can work on what they're passionate about.
Yeah, we are. In fact, Harvard Business School made a case about us, about our story, that explained a little bit the concept. But again, if I think on that case, probably today we would have to update it, because you find the nuances of the system. How do you negotiate? How do you involve the people? How do you approach the companies?
Sure.
Because sometimes it's not only individual people, it's companies,
Yeah.
And the way that we approach the companies, especially in the last 2 years, we have improved a lot, on how do we work together with them. And what we have found always is that it's really, really important to align the interest, align the commercial interest and the long-term view with the companies that are collaborating with us too.
What you've done, in essence, is having worked at very big companies, literally the A-list of Apple, Adobe, and Autodesk over the last almost 30 years. All of them and more want to spend millions of dollars a year on trying to build community within their employees. And that's what you guys have done.
Yeah.
And we know, when we look at the history of innovation, that that's how you get innovation, is through community.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes, innovation comes because you put together the diversity, the people from all over the place that has completely different mindset and completely different ways of thinking,
Yeah.
I always put a sample that I really like it, because, when we acquired the technology and we applied the technology to the vacuum environment of the Lawrence Livermore Lab, they had been for years trying to solve the problem of what happened with the levitation in a low speed environment, And we were just thinking about it, our system, when you arrive to a certain speed, not very low, but certain is not very high, but certain speed you start to levitate, but until that you don't levitate that. And then one person say, well, why don't we put wheels? We don't need to levitate when it's low speed. So we apply the wheels.
That's great.
Yeah. And that's an example that you say, well, it's a stupid thing, but this is what you can get when you put people with completely different expertise and in different mindsets together.
This is the other thing we know about innovation, and that is inclusion.
Yeah.
And your system is hyper-inclusive. I mean, you probably have some processes in place to keep this, but in a way, a young 14-year-old brilliant girl here just outside in the suburbs of Thailand who happened to take some online courses and knows how to use some software could be one of your 800 people working on some enabling component of this amazing revolutionary technology. And I don't mean to sound bad, but you don't care. Yep. If that person wants to be a part of this, great, you're inclusive. Join in. If you are ready to help, come on board. The Hawaiians, I lived in Hawaii for a little while, they have a saying, put an oar in.
Okay.
Because they do the rowing, and when you're in those long boats, everybody needs to put an oar in. And if you're willing to put an oar in and make the boat go, you're welcome. And that sounds like your philosophy.
Yeah, definitely. And, we, of course, you need some kind of people that they have resilience, they have the passion, they have that commitment, that's clear, okay, like always but again, sometimes we have incredible experience with people that we don't even think. And, you are building the community. It's not only the 800 people that works 10 hours, whatever. No, there is like more than 300,000 people around the world that sometimes help us, Sometimes we arrive to be sitting down in front of a government just because a small kid of 18 years old, 19 years old is a friend of somebody that put us in front of a government. It's incredible. It's incredible. The power of the crowd, the power of the networking is amazing.
So I will say right now, just because I feel like I just have to say it again and again, these 2 days at this summit are not just this moment in time where you come and spend 2 days here. This is you joining a community. That's how you have to think of this. You're part of this community of like-minded, open-minded, exponentially minded people who are doing things like what they're doing here. And if you don't take advantage of that, if you don't think about this as, hey, now I'm part of this community and engage, then it's sort of a waste. If you just think you're going to come in, learn some things and go out, that might work a little, but do more of this. Think the way these guys are, please. Okay, I promised some Q&A. Let's take some Q&A. Okay. We have some mic runners, I think. So great, we have people over here, and we have people with handheld microphones. They can see you better than we can, so we will not be trying to point you out. We're going to let our microphone runners help do that, and you'll have to get our attention so we know where you're at. So right over here, yes, please.
I got to start with a thank you for both of you. It's been a good couple of days. Thank you very much. One question: of the 800 people looking at this project, is anybody? One suggestion, maybe this is a loaded question, but are you looking at the possibility of making either the tube or some of the structure out of recycled plastic?
Well, it's a good question because we have right now three different versions of the tube. The first version is sheet metal. That is the one that you have seen in the presentation. There is a second version that we are already testing that is FRP, okay? It's composite, okay? Fiber plastic. And we have developed a specific machinery that will be able to go in the alignment, to be within the alignment. It's a very, very simple, let's say, on-site plant, okay? And with filament winding, okay? And yes, we have been working on that for a while. We are doing the first testing, and the next 300 meters that we are going to be building that will go for Toulouse are going to be in FRP. And we have a third version that is, we are working with, we have a special recipe for ultra high performance concrete with low outgas rate, okay? But that's something that we are still on analyzing it. Yeah, definitely.
Another question. Just get our mic there.
Hello. Just wondering, given the massive undertaking in any mass or rail transport, be it high-speed rail, normal rail, or in this case with Hyperloop, and the massive infrastructure planning and building needed, air travel still remains very attractive, given that the only infrastructure really is the only physical infrastructure really is the airports and the aircraft themselves. What can you really say to really, at least in the short term, compete with air travel for now? Thank you.
Well, in the countries that we have, or in Europe, for instance, that we have a lot of high-speed rail, okay, people basically don't take the plane when you go less than 600 kilometers, okay? Why? Because you go from city center to city center, it's much more convenient, you don't need to go to the airport, wait for 1.5 hours and all of that, okay? So we really think that the only problem that has the high-speed rail today, okay, is that there is a psychological limit that goes more than 2.5 hours, 3 hours. When you go more than 2.5 hours, 3 hours, people take the plane, okay? So for us, really, Hyperloop opened a completely different opportunity for people moving in a much more sustainable way, much more ecological way, okay? And from the point of view of energy, with less consumption of energy too, in almost all continental distance, okay? So in the long term, definitely we see that we will be competing with the continental flights, okay, definitely. And of course, it will depend always, that doesn't mean that every single area of the world or of each continent is going to be connected by Hyperloop, but the main cities, we think that make perfect sense.
Thank you. That all of a sudden just made me think about, and this is, I guess, a very American thing, but maybe you know from the movies, about how we didn't used to have the train across all of America.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. You had to go in covered wagons to get across. And it did revolutionize once we could. It really, really did. I think, and then the reality is that things will get used until they're no longer cost effective, right? That's why we still use fossil fuels, is because based on infrastructure and just cost per what we get out of the molecules of carbon we burn, we tend to go cheap. These kinds of things, including your business model, are enabled by exponentially increasing technologies. When Dirk and I had this conversation, it was just after Autodesk had moved to the cloud.
Okay.
And so you couldn't do this model effectively. I mean, we had tried for years. We've had the internet for a long time, but in the design space, it's just really hard. CAD files with lots of design information in them, and you have to move that reliably through your workflows. That all of a sudden sort of became available. And wow, all of a sudden you guys could have a business model that enabled engineers around the world, faster connections and networks, and all these things have come together more and more. Okay, another question. Anybody? Do you have the microphone here?
Yeah,
yes.
hi. Kind of connecting a few companies that we heard about over the last couple of days, do you think your tech could ever go in a different direction towards outer space, out of the atmosphere? Thinking far, far ahead, of course.
Well, you never say no, okay? that's the dogma in our company, okay? But let's say that right now we have job enough to do it underground. Okay, but could be. Definitely, there is nothing that prevents us from thinking about it. Okay, but I have to be completely honest, and it's not being our focus right now. Okay.
So what I also love about communities and bringing people together is when I met Dirk, the then secret technology was a magnetic lifting technology.
Yes. Yeah.
And the person who ran that company had the idea after talking with Dirk to use that magnetic lifting technology for certain stabilization things in satellites in space.
Yes.
And so innovation happens just because people get
That's
together and have conversations like that. And by the way, the reason we were both there was because they had another idea, as they were originally developed this technology to lift buildings on their foundation in an earthquake, just long enough for the ground to shake and then set it down. It only has to lift it a little. And they'd realized, oh my goodness, we could build a hoverboard, a real hoverboard, if we could just make a ramp with some metal sprinkles in it. And they did, and we were both there, and we're there to watch the hoverboard demonstration of a real hoverboard. No, yes. As a matter of fact, if you saw Buzz Aldrin on a hoverboard, we went to that was me. Buzz Aldrin is a friend of mine, and I, just because I like to mix things up, I said, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we put Buzz Aldrin on a hoverboard? And we did, and you can look that up. Okay, another question. We have time for a few more. If you have any, are there any hands up there? Yes.
Hello. Yeah, so I was very interested in the 115% kind of energy output. Is that mainly from kind of regenerative braking, or is it from solar power? And like, how much is that number based on the solar technology currently?
Okay. Well, basically in that number, we are counting basically with the solar power. And if you think about it, actual rail could do the same thing. Because at the end of the day, you have a huge right-of-way that you are not using it. You are using it only for one use. And that's the thinking that we have had always. No? We think in an infrastructure. We think in a use that infrastructure has been designed for this, and we don't even think in alternative uses. So basically, all the energy comes from the solar power, a little bit from the regenerative braking too, but it's not so relevant like the other. And then the other part of the equation, okay, is that because our passive magnetic levitation doesn't need to electrify the track, you really need very low consumption of energy, for doing the levitation. So when you put both things together, you arrive to that results.
So yeah, all about energy, right? And at the end of the day, that's important because the back end of that is where the energy comes from. Doesn't matter, right? Yeah. Other questions, by the way? Wave your hands around. Are there any? Am I missing anyone? No. Okay. Well, then with that, I think I'm going to say thanks, and I hope you found this interesting and maybe learned some stuff, and we hope to talk to you some more. Why? Because what is this? It's a community. What is this?
Community.
Thank you, you guys. Embrace that notion. We're a community. We're all here for the same reason. We all know that the better we all do, the better we all do. So let's talk, let's engage, let's figure out ways to do better. Let's think about the future of transportation in cities and all the other things we're hearing about today. But for now, go off. You have a few minutes to maybe stretch your legs before the next session, and we'll see you in just a little bit. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thanks.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you.